You're listening to the Business Brain Food Podcast.
Welcome to the Business Brain Food Podcast, the show business owners listen to when they want to take their business to the next level. Head to businessbrainfood.com.au to catch up on past episodes and access show notes from every episode. Now, here's your host, Ben Futrell.
Well, welcome back to another episode of the Business Brain Food Podcast. This, my friend, is the podcast that is 100% devoted to taking you and your business to the next level. And the good news is, doesn't matter whether you're just brand new to this business thing, so maybe you're just scratching that entrepreneurial itch, or maybe you're like myself and you've been in business for a long, long time and you've got the scars and the wounds to prove it. No matter what, there's always something new you can do to take our business to the next level. And today is absolutely no different. I'm going to be joined very, very shortly by Andrew Henderson, and we're going to have a chat and dive deep into his entrepreneurial journey and how he's been also helping many entrepreneurs do amazing things across the globe. But before we do that, just a reminder that today's episode is brought to you by maximumprofit.com.au. The team at Maximum Profit help you build the business you imagine. So if you imagined having a business that was more fun, more profitable, had more sales, more customers, and was just more of what you wished for, then maybe you need to talk to the team at maximumprofit.com.au. What they find is that typically business owners go into business and they find it harder than they expected, working longer hours and earning less money than if they worked for somebody else. Build the business you imagine by working with the team at maximumprofit.com.au. All right, today's guest, Andrew Henderson, he lives by 5 magic words. Here they are. Go where you're treated best. I love that. Nomad Capitalist helps people to find the best places to live, bank, invest, incorporate, and start a business, hire, date, and much, much more. And after nearly a dozen years of visiting and living in over 100 countries, Mr. Henderson has become an expert on the growing field of global citizenship. He's the author of Nomad Capitalist, a book discussing the concepts of global citizenship that anyone can apply. Welcome to the show, Andrew.
Great to be with you.
Hey, our absolute pleasure, buddy, and we can't wait to dive deep and get stuck into learning a bit more about you and what you've been up to. So maybe let's start there. Tell us a bit about your very first business experience. Sometimes they're when people are at school, sometimes they're after they've left school. When did you sort of have your first sort of entrepreneurial business experience?
I sold a lot of stuff door to door at 9, 10 years old. I sold stuff for school. I also made a magazine, a very short-lived magazine about our neighborhood that I went and sold door to door. When I was 12 years old, I started riding my bike up and down the street because I was helping my parents sell our home with a website. Back then, nobody what's a website? 1995, 1996, there was not much of an infrastructure online for selling real estate as there is today in the United States. And so I went and said, hey, do you want me to make you a website? And you're selling your house, you got a for sale sign, let me make you a website. Lemonade stands, all kind of stuff. That was as a kid. And I've been running businesses as an adult ever since I dropped out of a school at 19 years old.
Isn't it funny how so many entrepreneurs start off doing things when they're sort of 10 years old or whatever? I hear all these stories. Were your parents entrepreneurial, or is this something that you've started now? Or tell us about that. Did you have a background, like a family background in business?
My father was in business. He didn't build a big business. My father is in the wealth management business. So it's, high dollar, kind of small team. It's not the kind of thing where you've got to, build out a team of 100 people or you've got to have a huge market strategy. What's interesting was my father's side hustle was radio. He was on the radio growing up from, 14 years old. That was his passion. And, he realized very early on, not a very stable business in the 70s. I mean, certainly now it's in tatters. I have friends who own radio stations. The business is dead. But even back then, he said, I'm going to get hired and fired all the time. I'm going to be traveling around the country. He said, let me do this stable thing. I'll run a business. I'll make some money, and I'll do the side hustle will be radio. And how interestingly, how he kind of built up a big part of his practice was by hosting a radio show back in the days when they would pay talented people to host radio shows about finance. Now guys who are like in my business and radio, we would sell the time to anyone who would pay to talk about money. Back in his era in the 80s, they would actually pay you to do a show about money. And what was interesting was a lot of clients would call him from hearing him on the radio and come in and work with him. So kind of an interesting experience. And I think now we're seeing that all these years later where we've built a big YouTube channel that brings in business, and people write books and they do all kinds of things to establish their credibility that, have always worked. And that was an example.
Yeah, isn't it interesting how things have changed over time with marketing? Like how before, they pay people to come on radio. Now it's all about social media, isn't it? Like it's just changed so much.
It's changed, and in some ways it hasn't changed. I mean, what was interesting is, I mean, you make a good point. A couple of years ago, I remember watching, I think it was Frank Kern was talking about his, big new discovery. and the big new discovery was direct mail.
Yeah.
I was doing direct mail at 19, 20, 21 years old with a business partner of mine who was about 11, 12 years older than I am. And his family business had been using direct mail for decades in all kinds of different enterprises. And so, I mean, yes, everything is changing, but in another sense, it's kind of like fashion. It's kind of like the 80s fashion comes back 30 years later. I mean, everything that's old is new again.
Yeah, I just saw somebody walking up the street with a mullet. I don't know if you know what that is in Australia. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, is that coming back in fashion? That a mullet and a brightly coloured checkered shirt. So tell us about, like, what would you say has been your most successful thing in as an entrepreneur? What's been your the thing that you can hang your hat on so far?
Well, I started different businesses. I mean, my first business at 19, I had a couple different businesses that I eventually consolidated in the radio industry, where we were, doing basically marketing on a nationwide level, helping radio stations, sell inventory and creating opportunities for advertisers. That was pretty successful. It was really exciting being able to close, a Fortune 50 company. That was something I never thought I'd be able to do. Something that I really don't focus on. I really didn't enjoy that much. I mean, it's a tough, slow sales process, but that was interesting. We worked with a $1 billion gross revenue company that was interesting. I invested in some little, smaller businesses that taught me a lot about just, dealing with, small business. We had a company that cleaned swimming pools, and we built it from nothing to one of the biggest in our part of the United States. What's been interesting in my work at Nomad Capitalist, not about what we do, but about the business side of things, is I've really kind of classified people into two categories, and myself included. Are you a hustler or are you a builder? And I think for a while I wanted to be a serial entrepreneur and just start different things. I still don't know a single thing about swimming pools. I just saw an investment opportunity based on my own need, and I did it and sold it 18 months later and did very well. But I think what I see now is, for me, what I would hang my hat on is I'm a builder. I've been doing Nomad Capitalist for 7 years. It's been the most organic business I've run because I never expected it to be what it is. And it's something that I could be doing for a long time. And I think because I geek out in this stuff and I would do it for free in a way that I wouldn't, do swimming pools. I wouldn't come over and clean your swimming pool for free or arrange guys to do it. I mean, I think that's really the interesting thing. And so what I would hang my hat on today is being a builder who's here for the long haul.
It's interesting. You mentioned you'd do that for free. And I remember years ago being in a band, I used to say to the guys we played with, don't tell anybody, but I'd do this for nothing. Do you think that's one of the keys to building a great business, is that you have so much joy or passion for what it is you're doing that you'd be willing to do it for nothing?
I read, and now we kind of see some of the veneer has been peeled off. But I remember reading as a teenager some of the Donald Trump books, and I forget which one it was, where he said, there's a certain natural instinct you have to have in business or anything else. So yes, I think that's important. But I also think, you hear some people, their passion is something that probably doesn't have as high a probability as making money. So it's a very interesting kind of question where, is follow your passion work? I hear arguments on both sides. No, follow your passion's dumb. Yes, follow your passion, you'll be fine. And then you have people like Gary Vee, who is just like, well, follow your passion, you'll be happy. Who cares about the business side? I do think there's certain entrepreneurial skill sets, some of which are innate, some of which can be learned. And so I think it propels those skill sets further. But I think just following your passion on its own, probably not enough to make a big, to make a lot of money.
Do you think there's a formula or something to be successful? Is there like a few skills you need as an entrepreneur?
Well, one thing I've been focused on really recently is intuition. And I realize every time I don't follow my intuition, whether it's about hiring someone, whether it's about, firing someone and I don't, whether it's about a certain thing, I suffer. I have a good intuition, but I've allowed people to get in my way. I've allowed people to tell me I'm unreasonable. I've allowed people to shame me. And what I've realized is, you don't have an iPhone because Steve Jobs was reasonable. So I don't exactly know what it is. I think the fact that I grew up around, that lemonade stand having door-to-door sales, I think that some of it came innate. And so in some ways, I'm not as dialed into the terminology as someone who, decided at 25 years old they didn't want to work at the insurance company anymore. They had to learn this from scratch. I think you can go either direction, but I think my direction was, just being surrounded by entrepreneurship and, the value of service, the value of salesmanship from a very young age. I guess salesmanship is very important too. If you can't sell, you have no business.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Because, I mean, you said you started off with some door-to-door at a very young age. How well do you think that set you up for being more successful growing your own businesses?
It wasn't totally linear in the sense of, I took some time off. I mean, a lot of the business ideas I had in high school were just terrible. And so it took me until 19. Even at 19, I didn't entirely know what I was doing. But I remember my father was bragging to some of his friends back, when I was in my early 20s and saying, Andrew will pick up the phone and just call anybody. I mean, I would pick up people who, had radio shows, who I wanted to help them, grow their radio show. I'd say, hey, do you want me to help you grow your radio show? And I guess, I mean, part of what's been difficult for me as an entrepreneur is not knowing where I'm different and not knowing where I excel. Like, I think for most people, that's pretty difficult, and it's something they're not willing to do. And I think, to me, the biggest challenge in today's entrepreneurial climate is that revenue has somewhat become a vulgar word among many of the entrepreneurs out there, who seem kind of opposed to the idea of salesmanship and calling people and having revenue. It's all about like, are we giving away enough free deodorants to kids in Africa? And the number one priority has to be bringing in profitable revenue. So yeah, I think, being able just to go and knock on doors set me up to be able to go and knock on doors as an adult.
Yeah. And you mentioned before you worked out you're a builder, not a hustler. In your mind, what's the difference? Is a hustler somebody who does the daily grind, is it, to run a business?
No, and I'm not trying to be pejorative about it. I mean, what's interesting in our work, we work with all different kinds of people. I mean, I'm talking to a gentleman later today. We're finishing up his case. He's been 40 years in the business, and he's kind of like me. He just found an opportunity and went for it. He didn't read 100 different books. He didn't read The Purple Cow. He just built an opportunity, and now he's selling his company for almost $100 million. You would never expect he would be this. You'd see this guy in the street. You'd never imagine it. What I see as the hustler is the person who, I saw it in the radio business. One day they're selling mortgages. The next day they're selling gold. The next day they've got a debt relief company. They're good at bringing in leads. They're good at, closing people. And again, I'm not against that. I think that's a very important thing in a business. But to me, the hustler is chasing the opportunity at the moment. It's Amazon FBA, then it's the next thing. And, for me, what I've realized, I think is a key to success is if you find something that you love, find something that's profitable, and find something that's sustainable, and you do that long enough. I mean, we were featured in Bloomberg, for example. That was 5 years in, and I'm imagining after 10 years in, we'll be featured by more people. We recently had someone who's one of the wealthiest people in the world reach out to us to be our client. If you're just in a business for 2 years and you're on to the next thing, you're not going to have that. So I think that's what I mean.
Yeah, okay. So what ignited the spark in you to start Nomad Capitalist? Was it that you wanted to travel more, or tell us about that?
Yeah, so I was living in the United States. I grew up as this kind of theoretical libertarian in high school who said, high taxes are bad and, the government's ripping you off. And then when I started my business at 19 and I had the first bill, it's like, oh, now it's real. And so I started traveling the world because I had money. I was too afraid to move offshore fully. But I realized that I wasn't very good at dating American women. And I just wanted to go somewhere else. I didn't really feel very American. And so I wanted to leave and travel. And as I travel more, I said, well, hold on a second. Why am I paying all these taxes? But I'm not even in the US that much. And so eventually I just kind of figured out this whole process of what we do at Nomad Capitalist, go offshore. But I guess what had happened was I was leaving the United States and I said, well, let me sell the last of my businesses. I think the last business was the swimming pool business. And so I had it listed for sale. I was traveling most of the time. I sold it, made sure the guy was taken care of, and then took off for good. And when I said, like, well, what's my next act? And I figured, I know the media. Maybe I can be some kind of media creature. I'll write a blog. I'll make some videos. And, maybe if ABC News is looking for some guy to talk about, investing in Myanmar or, the whatever, man, I'll be the guy they call. And so I just started blogging about my experiences kind of going around the world, one country per month, kind of trying to build a deep network, and kind of see where the opportunities are. And eventually people just started reaching out to me and asking for help for this, for that, and this and that. And I guess it's been the ultimate organic entrepreneurship case study of you just continually hone and tweak and adjust.
So did you just start out with a plan? I mean, you've got my notes here say you've turned over over $1 million in your first 12 months and over 125,000 followers on your social media now. Did you plan all of that, or did that just happen?
I don't think that the first 12 months wasn't $1 million. I mean, we did offer an event. I said, because I didn't plan for it to happen. I was blogging and I had a friend who said, why don't you host an event? Like, that'll be kind of fun. I said, yeah, that'd be fun. And we charged for it. We made some money. We didn't make that much money. And I guess through the live event process, I realized a lot of people who go to live events, at least the way we promoted it then, they just kind of wanted to learn and not do. So I think that there was not much of a plan as there was in other businesses. And again, I'm not saying don't have a business plan, but I think that focusing on creating something of value first. Not many people want to travel around the world with one suitcase, living in hotel rooms in Cambodia and trying to figure out how to invest in frontier markets, even though it's highly profitable. And so I guess what I did was offer expertise on a subject that a lot of people are interested in, but very few people are willing to really do themselves or are confused about how to do it. And it just happened organically. I mean, so I would say create value was the plan, but it was kind of, it was very unclear to me at first.
And so when did you get clear? I mean, at what point did you go, yeah, I'm onto something here. Here's what I'm going to do.
I had a friend of mine who's actually he's one of the guys I worked with in the radio business. He's a guy that I cold called and tells this story. I just called him and said, hey, I see you've got a radio show on 3 stations. I happen to know and kind of like your boss. Why don't you help, hire me to put you on 200 stations? And he did, and became one of my biggest clients and allowed me to travel a lot more because he was like the lowest. The lesson was the people who send you multi-million-dollar checks every year are the lowest maintenance. The guys who send you, $7,000 a month are often a pain in the butt. But anyway, we stayed in touch, and he's a great marketing and kind of, he knows how to present stuff. And he saw me hosting these live events. He saw me, selling ebooks and stuff. And he said, listen, I know you're a doer. He says, why don't you offer a service to folks to offer your knowledge on a holistic level? And that's when it really got clear that there are people out there, who have, in many cases, a lot of money, who want to know how to get a second passport, how to lower their taxes, how to do this, how to do that. And they've called the way that we do on a full-time basis. They've called 27 lawyers who don't reply to them quickly. They prevaricate, they hedge, they don't have real answers. They've got to call 19 different people to get the solution. And he said, this is your competition. Why don't you take all the knowledge of all this traveling and be like, help people implement this plan for what they need to do to, if it's save taxes, do that. If it's get a second passport, do that. If it's, invest in Cambodia, do that, or all of the above. And I think that's when it really got clear because I realized where the market demand really was. And so we've spent about 4 years offering that service and perfecting that service.
Yeah, okay. And so how do you go about running now? I mean, you said you left the US, and so tell us a bit about how you what does a year look like for Andrew now? You're living in multiple countries, you're traveling around. Tell us a bit about that. How do you run your business globally?
For a long time, it was, traveling around a lot. Eventually, I got a base. I mean, Kuala Lumpur at one point was my main base. It's still a home that I have, but I would still, I would just park my stuff in the wardrobe and I would be traveling most of the year from there. What I've done now, being newly married, being now in my mid 30s, having been 12 years of this traveling, it's kind of gotten to me, at a certain point you get accustomed to certain things and, you get tired of dealing with the people at Turkish Airlines or whatever. So, what I'm doing now is I've developed something called the trifecta, where you have 3 home bases. They don't have to be on 3 different parts of the world, but for me it is. I think we're finalizing a home here in Mexico City, where I'm at now. I have a home in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, And I have a couple smaller homes in Eastern Europe, like in Montenegro on the beach, in Serbia. We do some business there, Tbilisi, where my wife and I kind of have an emotional attachment. And so we split our time between those homes. And what I'm doing now is actually got 3 of my team members traveling around the world at this very moment, doing research, meeting bankers, doing the stuff that I used to do. So I've kind of passed the torch off to a staff that's now about 20 people, and I've taught them what to do. And yeah, I split my time in about 3, equally between 3 parts of the world.
And how have you found social media playing a part in your growth? Because you mentioned before about YouTube. Are you still using
Mhm.
those avenues to market yourself and market your business?
It's interesting. I mean, so I guess YouTube is social media. I've never really put it. To me, I guess we're not very good at Facebook or Twitter. We haven't really focused there as much, or Instagram. Our clientele is guys mostly. 30 to 50 years old, 55. Um, and so YouTube has been incredible because I think here's the one thing that I noticed in my business that may not apply to everyone else. Our business is the offshore industry. And this friend of mine said, you know what it is? Most of these guys, it's romance novels for men. It's a bunch of guys talking about investing in mines in, central Chad. And here I am, I'm saying I can't get people to come to Mexico and invest, right? So, there's so much stuff out there in my industry that's just kind of like, it's just kind of financial porn that guys get excited about because they want to be James Bond. It's also a lot of really bad people who I mean the industry, the offshore industry. You think of it, if you're the average person, it's like, oh, that's illegal, it's dodgy. The reality is none of those things. And so
Mm.
YouTube is a great platform to me to say my market strategy is, you know what, I'm willing to be on camera and say, here's my experience traveling. Here's how to do this. Here's how to do that. And you know what? I'm going to be the guy who's not hiding behind the shadows. I'm going to be the guy who doesn't use a stock photo and a fake name. I'm going to be a real person, and I'm going to say, here's my experience. And I'm going to show that it's legal. And I'm going to open up this industry to a whole new group of folks like yourself who 20 years ago would have never imagined doing this. But now that so many people have businesses in the cloud, it's possible to do that. And so I think for that reason, YouTube and the video medium has been good for us. I think I'm capable of speaking. I come from that background. I think that's one thing you need to be on YouTube. But I think for our particular industry where transparency was sorely missing, it was a great way to step in.
Yeah, because it was sort of like a bit of black magic, wasn't it? Just spend a bit of time in a different country and save tax was sort of, that was the message that was out there. No one really knew, or set up a company in the BVI and hope for the best. But yeah,
Look at Jordan Belfort. I mean, The Wolf of Wall Street, right? I mean, look at that movie, the Swiss banking scene. Everyone thinks, oh, this guy's a crook. Well, maybe he was, but I mean, just because you bank in Switzerland, there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that's what I really tried to clarify. And so we've gotten pretty deep now, 600 plus videos. But
yeah, and I think that's one of the things, isn't it? I mean, that's one of the technology, and like I said, talking about the cloud or the internet has allowed people like yourself to be able to educate people all over the globe in a very leveraged way. Without YouTube, I mean, have you got other marketing, or do you really rely on YouTube to get your message out there?
well, I mean, the thing that I initially did before even YouTube was I was just writing blogs. And
Mm.
so, I mean, initially it was just more of a thing where I've always enjoyed writing. I always wanted to be a writer. Before I wanted to be in business at 11 or 12, I wanted to be a writer. And so that's why I wrote my book, not because I wanted to join the fray of people writing books for marketing, but because I just felt something I always wanted to do. But the initial big thing for us is we've written over, I don't know, 1,500 blog posts at this point. It's become a bit more focused now, and we do research what people want to hear about. We dial it in a bit more for marketing purposes than when I first started. It was just kind of like journaling in a sense. And I've changed as a person, quite frankly. All these years being abroad have changed me and have sobered me and calmed me, and maybe a happier person. So that's reflected. But I mean, the blog, I think we get about 500,000 people a month on the blog from all over the world. That's been big. YouTube is, I guess, a little smaller than that, and that's the bulk of it.
Yeah, no, good stuff. So what do you wish you knew when you started? Like, is there anything, if you could turn back the clock, that you go, you know what, I wish I did that differently? Is there anything that stands out?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one thing I wish I would do now is even is enjoy the journey a bit more. I mean, there's a lot of things I guess I would have done differently. It's funny. I look at every business I've started. I've been in about 5 different industries, including Nomad Capitalist. Um, and this is what I want to do long term. I think every business teaches me something. But I think it's kind of like telling your kids not to put their hand on the hot stove. It's almost easier for them to learn the lesson the hard way. And so I think, what I would say I wish I knew is to invest more in yourself. I think, if I look back at some of my past businesses, had I been more aggressive in marketing, and reinvested more of the money, I would have done better. I think I was scared too much.
In what way?
We could probably.
Where would you? I mean, when you say invest in yourself, you mean in training or coaching or in enjoying your life? What do you mean?
Well, I think I always, to a certain extent, enjoyed my life. And I think I realized at a certain point, I mean, I think you have to know when to stop investing. When I was in the radio business, eventually I just got a bunch of blue chip clients sending me a bunch of money, and I knew there was no other growth. I just wanted to kind of dump out of the business. And but I think I would have invested more in training. I would have been less cost conscious. I mean, it's funny, we now spend $50,000 sometimes without batting an eyelash. I recently got together with my old business partner at my wedding, and he said, it's funny, since we started working together, you used to hoot and holler about a $50 invoice. Like, what are we doing? And I think it's so much more comfortable now that when you're comfortable spending money, you grow a lot faster. And so I wish I would have been comfortable. Yeah, listen, I mean, I back about a couple of years ago when we really got clarity, it came from paying a lot of money to people to help us figure out exactly how to connect with folks. And so, it's hard to let go of money.
Yeah.
If you're in business, it's hard to let go. I can see it in people. Listen, we had a guy recently. The guy has hundreds of millions of dollars, and he calls and says, money's not an object. I said, money's always an object. Money's always the issue all the time.
But as you said before, the one that can pay you 125 grand or whatever you're saying, and is always a lot easier to deal with than those that struggle to pay you. Do you think that is a big part of it, is the mindset around money? Because people, I think, unfortunately, as we grow up, we are all driven by the dollar, whether people like it or not. The reality is that money is not everything, but it's up there with oxygen, right? It's pretty important.
Yeah.
People, because they're driven by that. You said, you look at the mindset around money, and you just said there, once you got comfortable with spending more money, you made more money. Do you think that is a big issue? I think. Do you think that's a big issue for entrepreneurs?
Yeah. Absolutely. And so in my field, one of the things that I have to tell people that, and this is my point, it's hard to, you have to experience it to really believe it at a soul level. I mean, I left the United States where I was paying about 42 cents in every dollar in taxes. And that wasn't my main reason. I mean, it wasn't my only reason to leave the United States. Again, I mentioned just, I didn't feel like it was my place. But you know what? Leaving and saving those extra 42 cents. Yeah, you know what I did? I started putting more money into my business because I started feeling more comfortable. I started, raising my lifestyle. I also started giving more. And so that makes you feel good. So I think one thing for entrepreneurs to understand, I think a lot of the time, we run on emotions. As much as we can say we don't, but when I get off a couple good phone calls, when I get some good work done, get some good research done, make some good progress on improving SOPs, whatever, I feel good. And I think feeling good is important. And I think keeping more of your own money makes you feel good. I think abundance makes you feel good. And I think you make good decisions based on that. I know, my father always raised me like, don't, be very careful spending money. Don't waste it. Nothing's guaranteed. I think that's a great lesson. But I also think that, being too stingy causes people problems, perhaps more than being too abundant.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think that scarcity mentality versus the abundance, because I think, there's enough to go around. You just got to get your share somehow, and that's, I think you've said it nicely before, is you just got to add some huge value somewhere along the line. Has there ever been a time where, I always wonder with the people that are doing what you're doing, where I guess you're a global citizen, you've got multiple homes, multiple countries. Is the cost of setting that all up, doesn't that soak up the savings?
Well, what we do at kind of what I've tried to create in our businesses, and I think this is another secret to success. I try to create what I wish existed for me. I hate filling out forms. So when I got a citizenship in St. Lucia by investment, there's a lot of forms. They do very intense due diligence on you. I trained my assistant how to do it. She called Taft Elementary School and got my transcripts. And so, does it cost more? I listen with us. If you're making $60,000 a year as a freelance writer living overseas, yeah, you're not going to be working with us. There's probably some strategy you could do at a small level. Your risk tolerance or your risk level is lower. But we had a gentleman, the other day. We're going to probably save him about $200,000 a year, and it's going to cost him probably 3 months of that to turn on the strategy. So what I would say is it's always uncomfortable to make progress. Like it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah.
Before you can save $200,000 a year, you've got to pay $50,000. But I think that's where I've gotten very comfortable. I'm looking at office rent for us right now, and I'm saying, let me just spend 200 grand and buy a little office, and just remove that monthly expense. Because I believe in myself. I believe in the business. And so I think that because I've lived it so many times now, I've seen, hey, I did this and it cost me something, but the rewards were great. Now I get it. But yeah, it is something that we certainly struggle with, where it's hard for guys to let go of 50 grand.
Yeah.
Turn on their offshore tax strategy. Even though they make it back in 3 months, it's like, oh, what if it doesn't work? And I've just been living it so long, I know it does work.
But that's the problem, isn't it? With anything, unless it's a guarantee, it is a risk, and people are brought up to be risk averse, aren't they? So I think it's interesting from an entrepreneurial point of view. Those that is taking risks. Let me ask you the question: is taking risks, do you think, part of the secret of being a successful entrepreneur or business owner?
Well, what I would say in our business, here's the thing: if I'm putting money into starting a new product for my Amazon store, that's risky. If I'm following the IRS tax laws to the letter, there's not much risk in that, right? It's not like, well, if it's Tuesday and you want to save taxes, you're screwed. Or, we spin the wheel. It's not how it works. So I think that what we do is pretty low risk. The answer to your question, do you need to take risks to be an entrepreneur, is interesting to me, because people would say, wow, Andrew's a really risky guy. He never had a corporate job. He just called people. For me, that's very low risk. My father's a pretty risk adverse guy. He's in the finance industry. It's just kind of a risk adverse area. You have to be willing to do what other people aren't. The reason that we have the number one presence in our area is because I outwork everybody. Other people have 40 blog posts. I have 1,500 blog posts. So I don't know if that's a risk. I just think it's blocking and tackling. I just think it's going out and doing hard work every day. And that's where I come back to the hustler versus builder. Yeah. I think the hustler looks for the edge, for the angle, for the loophole. And I'm not saying like I don't like those people. I know some of those guys. They're my friends, but I'm not looking for angles. I'm just going out every day and doing hard work because I enjoy it. I don't look at that as risk. I think if you have the intuition and you have the hard work and you have the good idea, I don't think it's very risky. But certainly many people don't have those elements, and that's why they think it's risky.
Yeah. And so what three pieces of advice would you give to somebody who is thinking about becoming a global nomad, I guess, or a global citizen and running a business digitally across the world from anywhere?
Well, I would do a cost-benefit analysis and make sure it's worth it. I would ask yourself if it's something that you really wanted to do. I think that, again, people watch James Bond and he's traveling around and he's sleeping with beautiful women. Not anymore, by the way. They kind of like made it different. But anyway, the classic James Bond.
That was the good old days.
The good old, wow, you can't say it anymore, right? I'll be public enemy number one if I say it, right? I can't say it, but you'll say it.
That's when James Bond was James Bond. That was
right. Now he's like a mess of a man, and he's struggling. But I would ask you, do you want to do it? And that's what I would ask people for anything. Is are you committed to doing it, or are you in love with the idea? And my advice would be commit to a year. Remove the permanence of it. If you think you want to do it, commit to a year. I did that at one point. I committed to a year. I think I canceled my cell phone. I turned up a bunch of stuff. I didn't sell my house, but I did a year. And I said, you know what? My goal is going to be to keep doing it. But if I hate it, everyone will know it's for a year. I can come back without egg in my face. And I think that's the issue. So I guess my suggestions would be, cost benefit analysis, remove the permanence. You can always change your mind. People think, you can't change your mind. And I would make sure that you really, want to do it for the right reasons. By the way, for that point, and this doesn't have to be just global citizenship, this could be anything. If you want to do it for the right reasons, don't let your girlfriend talk you out of it. Don't let your mother nag you out of doing it. I'm not saying disrespect your mother, but I am saying you're not living your mother's life.
Yeah, do what's right for you. I think that's good advice, and really, really appreciate it. Now we're just about out of time, Andrew. So I know there'll be some listeners that are, interested in, and they might like the idea or the notion of being a global citizen or traveling the world and being able to, run their business from anywhere. What can they do to learn more, mate? Because I know you're helping plenty of people do this.
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting thing about this business is it's a new thing to a lot of people. What I would suggest is go on Amazon, get the book Nomad Capitalist. What I've done is I've taken a lot of knowledge. Yes, you can get some of it for free on the internet. That's a complaint from some folks. I've also added a lot of stories and anecdotes, though, and I've aggregated it to where you can get the entire picture of what this is like and get the picture of the opportunities without having to traipse all over the internet. I think that's a great place to start. And actually, some of the most successful people we've helped, they started with the book because they knew here's what's possible, here's what's not, here's some interesting ideas, here's a perspective. So I would do that. I would get the book. You can definitely check out our blogs on nomadcapitalist.com. You can check out our videos on YouTube /nomadcapitalist. If you've done all that stuff and you feel like it's a good thing and you'd like to learn more, you'd like to dive in. We're a very boutique firm. We work with about 10 people a month, and you can learn more on nomadcapitalist.com, and we'd love to have you.
Perfect. Well, we'll put all those links into the show notes. You can head across to businessbrainfood.com.au, episode 237, or you can just put in Nomad Capitalist into the search box or Andrew Henderson, and this episode will come up. We'll make sure all the links are in the show notes for you to click on those, and you can go and learn more. If you want to start discovering whether or not it's a good thing for you, I'm sure there are some people that, like you said, like the idea, and then once they dive a bit deeper, maybe they work out it's not for them. But there's plenty of people that I know are enjoying that type of life, you included. And I think, the book is a great idea because once it's like the 4-minute mile, isn't it, Andrew? Once it's been run once, it can be run again. And why do it the hard way when you can do it the easy way? Just learn from somebody who's already taken those steps. So thanks again for sharing everything with us today. We love your honesty, and it's great to have this chat.
Always great to be with you.
All right, mate. All we've got to do is the 60-second scramble where I ask you some quick questions. You give me some quick answers. Are you ready for that?
I'm as ready as I can be.
All right. We get the clock ticking. Listen for the buzzer. Do you have a favourite inspirational quote you can share?
I had favorite inspirational quotes. I've gotten away from inspirational quotes. My inspirational quote is work hard every day. So I've gotten away from the quotes.
Nice. Have you got a hidden talent?
I have a hidden talent that if I listen to anyone speak for very long, I can do an impression of them. So I've ended up with everything from Trump impressions to all sorts of other people.
We've got to have a Trump. Can you do a Trump for us?
Well, I mean, we've got a great podcast. People are calling. They love the podcast. And I've been hearing some incredible things about the podcast. So I'm really very excited. You've got a great podcast. And I think many people have great podcasts, but you've got really the best podcast.
Love it. Thanks, Trump. What's your biggest addiction?
Work.
Favorite book?
I don't read so many books. What's a book I've read recently? I don't have a favorite book at the moment. I have to be honest. I have not read so many books recently.
Well, let's say it's Nomad Capitalist, eh? It's got to be your favorite.
That's a good favorite book. I think that should be people's favorite book.
Perfect. Well, mate, there you go. You survived the 60-second scramble. Love that Trump impersonation. Thanks again for joining us for today's episode. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Well, if you've enjoyed today's episode, head across the iTunes store or the Stitcher app, leave your honest review or rating. We do read them all. We love to get your feedback. Of course, go and check out those links, all in the show notes there. Nomadcapitalist.com is the place to start. Check out Andrew on YouTube. Get his book. Go and check out his website. And if you want to travel the globe and learn how to be a nomad capitalist yourself, then the book is the place to start. I think that's an amazing opportunity for you guys that are listening. And if you want to do that, that's a good way for you to learn. Today's episode was brought to you by MaximumProfit.com.au. The team at Max My Profit is expanding, and we're looking for business accelerators to join the team. So if you're a business coach, consultant, or advisor, you'd like to become one, you may be the person that we're looking for. Head across to maxmyprofit.com.au, click on the About tab, and learn about becoming a business accelerator. It's a great opportunity for you to work with us and work for yourself by working with us and build your own business in a franchise environment. So maxmyprofit.com.au is the place for you to go. Well, there you go. Once again, thanks so much for tuning in for today's episode. It's been a very insightful chat with Andrew. I hope you got a lot out of that. I got a lot out of it. Always love learning from people that are doing something very entrepreneurial, very different, and helping other people also fulfill their dreams. And I think that's what makes a business really successful, is the ability to be able to serve people and help them shortcut things that are more difficult than they need to be. So I think that's certainly what Andrew is doing, is helping people become global citizens without all of the fuss. And once again, thanks for tuning in. You've been absolutely amazing. I've been Ben Futrell. Until next week, have a very profitable day. See ya.